All right. So today's masterclass is all about recovery from betrayal. So I assume if you're interested in this class, if you're watching the replay, or if you're here live, that you have some experience with betrayal. So for that, I want to at first say my heart goes out to you. My heart is heavy, and when every time I connect with another woman who's experienced betrayal, because it just is one of the most unsettling, unnatural experiences that we can have. And it's because it comes from, typically, it comes from the person or the people who are the absolute closest to us, the people that we chose to let into our inner circle, the people that we trust the most, the people that we plan to do life with, whether it's a spouse, a partner, a best friend, a parent, a sibling. It's somebody that we're, like I said, we're close to as an inner circle, and they have intentionally made the choice to do something that is harmful to us, knowingly harmful. I mean, that's sort of the definition of betrayal, is when somebody intentionally violates our trust. And it's so hurtful because they are so close. I think of ourselves as, like, if you think of yourself as a castle and you have people all on the grounds around the outside of the castle, and then you have people that you allow inside the drawbridge, and then you have people that you allow on the first floor. The visitors and the guests come in and out, and then there's, the higher up into the castle you get, the more the smaller and smaller and smaller the circle is, the fewer people you allow into that intimate space. And somebody that you've allowed to the top of your castle has made the choice to violate your trust and intentionally break connection with you. And it just is, initially when it happens, it feels like it's impossible to overcome. So today I'm going to talk about, there's 3 stages that we go through whenever we've experienced betrayal, when that trust has been violated. And the 3 stages I'm going through are sort of what happens when we don't intentionally interrupt how things play out after a betrayal. If we don't intentionally seek healing, if we don't intentionally, it's not really self-correct. It's like it heal. If we don't process the experience and the emotions and heal, then I want to talk about how we end up back in the cycle and we never really fully recover. I was speaking with someone the other day. It was actually like somebody in the business world, a business coach, and she obviously knows that I work with betrayal, so she was talking about it, and she was sharing one of her experiences. She's, in her 40s, and she was talking about an experience she had in university where her boyfriend and her best friend, she said it wasn't sexual, but somehow they corroborated on something and broke and violated her trust. And she was like, I'm still not over it. I still haven't recovered. And that's not unusual for us. If something really big has happened, for us to say, like, I don't know that I can ever recover. And honestly, we can't unless we do some really intentional work. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the stages, like I said, that we go through. And then I'm going to talk about what can happen if we intentionally interrupt those stages and we intentionally engage in some healing, and how it can change our lives. Okay, so other than affair, betrayal can be hiding an addiction, it can be lying, someone being disrespectful to you or not having your back. So betrayal can be like, a boss. I know I've experienced this. I'm sure a lot of you have as well. Like a boss doesn't have your back, or they tell one employee one thing and then you another thing, and it creates conflict between you and your coworkers. It can be emotional cheating, bullying, shutting down, withdrawing, stonewalling. So obviously, the closer somebody is to you who chooses to violate your trust, the more hurtful and harmful it is. It's never fun or good when a boss chooses to betray us, or a coworker. But typically, those kinds of things we can recover from a little bit quicker than somebody who is like a partner or a sibling or a close friend. Okay, so what happens when our sense of when we're betrayed, our sense of safety is immediately threatened. And anytime anyone's sense of safety is threatened, it overwhelms our nervous system. We engage our fight, flight, freeze response, right? So when you are actively you're not feeling safe and your nervous system is overwhelmed, then you go into here's sort of what I've identified. When you're in fight, flight, freeze, you're in black and white thinking. Either everything's all good or all bad. So if you've been betrayed, you like if it's been a partner, then you think everything about that relationship was bad, or you question whether or not was there anything good in this relationship? Was there ever a time they were honest with me? We go into really black and white thinking. We disconnect our mind and body. So this is a really big one. Trauma causes us to disconnect from our body, which is where our feelings are. And a lot of people go into their head, and that's when they start overthinking, they start overworking, they can't feel, they don't have access to their feelings. Some people go into their body and they act out without thinking. So that's somebody who is, you know, maybe you're binge eating on something and you can't really, like, you're not even really consciously aware of what you're doing. You're just acting out within your body and you're not connected to your mind. You don't have agency so your mind body disconnects. We tend to blame ourselves. We start thinking of all the reasons why we should have seen it coming. We feel like it's our fault, like I should have known better. I should have seen the signs, right? And what happens when we're stuck in self-blame? The reason we go into self-blame is it gives us a sense of control. If I found out my spouse is cheating on me, and I think I'm the idiot, I'm the one. I mean, all the signs were there, and I ignored them or I didn't see them. If I can convince myself that his acting out was my fault, then I'm in control. Then I could have done something different to stop it. And I don't have to feel that helpless feeling. I don't have to feel like he got me or that he was in control. It's a way, self blame is a way for us to try and take back control. And it's understandable that we do that, but really it's an avoidance strategy. We don't want to feel grief. We don't want to feel helpless. We don't want to feel like someone took advantage of us. That's a really, really, really crappy, bad feeling. So it's easier to avoid that feeling with self-blame. It's easier just to blame ourselves than it is to feel this feeling. So it's an avoidance strategy, right? And we go into self-protection, which I spend a lot of time talking about the rescuer, victim, perpetrator in the membership, and also in the 90-day, because it's really crucial to us understanding how we interact with people when we're self-protecting. But the gist of it is, if I am protecting my heart and not willing to be vulnerable, then then I will show up in the world as a rescuer, which means a people pleaser trying to prove my worth, or a victim, which is like, I don't know what I'm doing, I can't do this, I can't fix this, or a perpetrator where you're like acting out against people, you're trying to overcompensate so you don't feel weak or you don't feel like you're not enough, right? So we play one of these three roles when we're in self-protection, when we're guarding our heart, when we're living in fear and not wanting to be vulnerable. We're stuck in future and past thinking. So we're constantly thinking about either how can I protect myself in the future, or we're dreaming about this future reality where life is good and things are great, and we're not really actively working towards that. It's more of a dream state where we're just like constantly thinking about the day when we can escape the pain that we're in, or we're in past thinking, like all the things we could have done different, we should have done different, all the ways that they took advantage of us and we'll never get that time back, we'll never get those experiences back, and how we should have we should have made different decisions. Like we're just constantly ruminating in our heads over all the ways the past was wrong and should have been different, and all the ways we're going to fix it in the future. But it's not in like a I'm setting a goal and I'm working towards it way. It's more this dissociated, like dream state. And it just keeps us disconnected from ourselves, from the present moment, from where we're at. And it keeps us stuck, right? It keeps us sort of in victim mode because we're not actively creating lives for ourselves right now that we are in love with. We're dissociated from our body, we're dissociated from right now, and we're constantly thinking in our heads about the future and the past. Okay, that involves overthinking and overworking. Attachment to the perpetrator is interesting. It's like we start doing this as kids. So if you grew up in a home where your needs were not being met or you were not being seen, then this is when we learn to ignore our own needs and meet the needs of our caretakers so that we can maintain our attachment, because we have to have that attachment as survival, right? So that's where we develop the people pleaser capacity, ability, mentality, and we will perpetuate that. We'll repeat that pattern, repeat that cycle in our relationship. So if your spouse or your partner has cheated on you, then that the attachment to the perpetrator tends to be when like we ignore that, or we blame ourselves, or we say we forgive them and it doesn't matter, but we really just go more into hiding within ourselves rather than really dealing with the problem itself. So we're attaching ourselves to somebody who's not good for us, who's not healthy, who doesn't have our best interests at heart, who's really only taking care of their needs, but we still attach to them because it's what we know. We're repeating a pattern. Locus of control shift is where we don't, our sense of safety is not centered within us. Our sense of safety is centered within the world around us and the people who are in us. And this is why it's so incredibly devastating when somebody betrays us, when a partner or spouse especially betrays us, is we only feel safe because of the picture that we have within this couple, within the life that we've created with them. We don't feel safe within ourselves. And so trauma causes us to, and when they betray us, that sense of safety is disconnected. So we still think that we need something else to rescue us. We need something else to save us. We can't help ourselves, right? And we feel stuck. So we have that lack of safety within ourselves. That's deep, and that's a lot. This class isn't necessarily about going into the details of all of that. I do go into the details of all of this in the membership. I go into the details of all of this in the 90-day transformation. But I just wanted to give an overview of what's happening within our body, within our nervous system, within our sense of self when our lack of safety is triggered, when we no longer feel safe and our nervous system gets overwhelmed. So here's the deal. If you grew up with a lot of trauma, if you grew up in a home where you didn't feel safe or there was consistent abuse, then you may have created a sense of safety within your marriage. But then when something happens like betrayal, our nervous system reacts in a bigger way because it already is familiar with the threat. It's already familiar with the threat and the lack of safety. So some of us were never given the opportunity or never took the opportunity to regulate our nervous systems after our childhoods. Right? So if you already had a dysregulated nervous system, if you were already stuck in some of these, like if I'm reading that list and you're like, oh, that's me anyway. Like I've always struggled with self-blame, or I've always been in my head overthinking. And that means that your nervous system was already overwhelmed from unprocessed trauma from the past. And then this betrayal is piled on top of what was already there, right? And it can be really overwhelming. and so painful. And so that's honestly, that's why I do the work that I do. I can relate to that. I also had a childhood with a lot of trauma, and then a 19-year marriage where, yes, it ended in betrayal, but the trauma did not start with how it ended. The whole thing was a repeat of my childhood. So I'll go into that in a little bit. I know a lot of women can relate to this. Almost everyone in the 90-day journey with me right now is has experienced long-term marriages that have ended, that or have cycled through 2 or 3 marriages that all were different but the same, because we just repeat these patterns until we choose to interrupt them, until we choose to seek healing for ourselves. Okay, so phase one, when you initially find out that someone has betrayed you, that someone has broken trust with you, like I said, your nervous system is overwhelmed. You go into that fight, flight, freeze response. And we spend most of our time trying to understand what happens, conceptualize. Like I said, we disconnect our mind and our body. So we're ruminating in our head. We start obsessing over their behavior, what they did, who they did it with. We start digging through emails, through text messages, through we will stop at no ends, right? To get answers, to understand, to what this is a way to avoid feeling. We don't want to feel the grief. We don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to feel the sense of being taken advantage of or tricked, or so to avoid those helpless feelings, we go into our head and try and make sense of what's happening. That, or we go into our body and start emoting without a connection to our head, like it's disconnected, right? And some of us kind of bounce back and forth between the two. So I'm a person who tends to be in my head. I will conceptualize things because I don't want to feel. But if the feelings get big enough, it's like the pendulum swings all the way to the other side. And then I'm really in my emotions and in my body and acting out without being, and it's not really rational or reasonable. I can binge eat sometimes. I can get really angry and like throw things and break things. Like this is a way of emoting and acting out in a way that I'm not consciously present. All right. Of course, the part of being in your full-blown stress response is not being able to do daily functions. So either you're overeating or undereating, you are oversleeping or undersleeping. Typically, we can't socialize very well. We are distracted at work, right? We're constantly thinking about what happened when we're supposed to be working. We struggle with childcare, with housework. Like we just can't really, all of our daily functions. So I'm working with somebody who's in the very initial stages of betrayal. She found out like 2 weeks ago. And in her sessions with me, she's kind of freaking out, like, I'm not eating. And I'm like, just take a deep breath. As long as you're getting enough for like basic nutrition, let your body is dysregulated right now. And it's normal to, anybody who if I were to watch your life play out as a movie at this stage, anybody in your shoes would be dysregulated. Anybody. So just understand that this is just a season. This is just a phase. As long as you're getting enough basic nutrition and sleep to keep going, yeah, you're going to be dysregulated right now. When we freak out on top of what is, that's when it creates even more problems, right? So if we are judging ourselves or harsh with ourselves or upset with ourselves that we're not able to be normal, then we're putting even more shame and pressure on top of the shame and pressure that we're already feeling. We're compounding the problem, right? So another way to handle it is just be like, okay, like I'm dysregulated right now, and that's a normal place to be. We also, when we first experience the betrayal, one of the hardest parts of betrayal, and those of you who have experienced, I think, can understand this, is letting go of the future that you had planned. I still get upset about it sometimes. Like when I think about um, my children being parents and adult, and adults and parents themselves, and having grandchildren. And in my mind, I had this picture of them coming back home and us having, Christmas together, and it's not going to look like that because their dad and I are not together, and we'll create some version of that, but it's not the dream I had in my head of what my future will look like. And that is so incredibly hard to um, to accept, right? So especially in this initial phase, we start still trying to make the future that we still keep trying to bargain with ourselves and make it look like the way we thought it was going to look. Like, so if it's a friend, we're like, okay, we can still somehow be friends. Or if it's a partner or a spouse, this is why some women choose to ignore it, or they say they forgave them, but they didn't actually do any of the work to actually really forgive them. Um, they just kind of swept it under the rug and kept going and ignored for the sake of the kids, or said, I'm fine, or, you know, prayed about it, which I'm not saying that any marriage that's experienced betrayal can't recover. They absolutely can. It takes a lot of work from both people. Um, but I'm referring more to somebody who says they did the work, or says they're over it, or says they forgive, but neither of the partners actually did any healing work. They didn't actually restore the relationship. Um, but it's just because they can't handle the thought of letting go of the picture they had in their mind to start with. Right. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, because what that tells me is if I'm working with somebody and they have this picture of what they want life to look like and what they want their future to look like, that tells me that they're not really functioning, and probably have never really functioned fully in reality. That they are disconnected from reality. And again, like I said before, this is something we do when we have a lot of unresolved, unprocessed emotion. Then we tend to create a picture of what we want, and we create a picture of a dream, and we like start working towards that picture in our head, but our bodies aren't really connected to that. And so we're not actually living what the picture is, but we're satisfied enough because it looks okay. So I can very much relate to this. I had a husband and 2 kids. We bought a house. We lived comfortably in the suburbs. Our kids were in a private school. Like anybody who looked at our life, it looked like check, 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 check. They're living the American dream. They've got it together. What a cute couple. There's, high school sweethearts. Like everything looked just the way it was supposed to look. But I can tell you, on the inside, I felt dead inside. I felt miserable. I felt invisible, unseen. Um, I kept doing all the things that people told me would make me happy. I kept doing all the things that society, my culture, my religion all said brings joy and peace and comfort. And I can't say I didn't have moments of feeling those feelings. But at the end of the day, when I'm just by myself, I was dead inside. And it's because there was no real connection between me and my now ex. There was so much trauma that we both were covering up in different ways that it was never dealt with, that happened before we even met each other. But I didn't know any differently at the time than to just create a picture of what I'm supposed to do and what life is supposed to look like and move forward. And honestly, there are very few Americans who don't do this. This is the American dream, right? Like, it's not feel excited and embodied and full of joy and connected to your life. It's create the picture. And as long as the picture looks okay, and you can post pictures on social media about the vacations you're taking or the time you have with your kids or the dates you're going on with your spouse, then that is happy. But that's just not very many people's reality. I mean, not very many people know how to actually embody and feel. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But back to phase one, you're cycling through sad and angry, and really distracting yourself from your feelings with thinking about what happened. When did it happen? How did it happen? How long had that been going on? You're like obsessed with consuming all the details of what's going on. So phase one can last anywhere from 3 months to, I mean, some people stay in pieces of this phase for years. And typically those who do are ones who had a lot of trauma before the betrayal happened and were already dysregulated and already not really feeling safe in their own body. And so they are chronically in fight, flight, freeze response. But you know, a healthy person who had a pretty good sense of self, didn't have much trauma before, they're going to be in this phase for about 3 months. Slowly, again, this isn't this isn't black and white. These phases are kind of cyclical. You kind of come in and out of them, but typically, you know, if somebody comes to me and is ready and a betrayal has just happened, I pretty much know and work with them, assuming that for about the next 3 months, they're going to be pretty unregulated most of the time. Okay. Then we go into phase two, where it's like, you know what? I'm gonna, you know, you kind of are ready. You're tired of feeling all the feels or avoiding all the feels, and you want to get your power back. So you do that by proving you are worthy. So some people start dating and like having lots of sex and just going out. Some people take the uber religious route and like go all in on connecting with religion and proving that you're the good one and you would never be like that person who betrayed you, like you are righteous. And but it's coming from this place of needing to prove your worth, not from a genuine seeking connection with yourself, right? So you got to prove that you still got it. You show up in relationships self-protected. You're not vulnerable. You don't really trust. You have this motto like, I'm not ever going to be hurt again. I'm going to be in control from now on. I'm never going to connect myself to somebody who would take advantage of me. You don't, if some guy like does some little something that feels off to you, like you immediately either bark at him and address it, or you break up with him, like refuse to go out with him again. Like it's very, again, you're kind of still in that black and white thinking. And initially, when we create relationships here and we're not really vulnerable, we have a motto of, I'm not going to be hurt again. It feels good. We feel in control. We do still get to have some sense of connection and going out, and of course it feels good to be wanted and to be seen, especially if you've been cheated on with a spouse. It feels really good to have the attention of another person. But what happens is if let's say we find somebody, we're getting along, the dating's going well, we're pretty self-protected, but we're enjoying the benefits of having the attention of another person. But there comes this moment in time, and it's different for different people, so I can't give you an exact timeline, where you're stepping into a more intimate, like it's been several months, maybe even a year, and you're still self-protected. You haven't dealt with everything that's happened because you went into this to avoid feeling the feelings from when your ex cheated on you, right? And so you keep moving forward, and this new relationship is getting more and more intimate. But the problem is, you don't know how to be intimate. Like, it doesn't feel safe still because you have all these feelings from the past that weren't processed. So you don't feel safe. And so what happens is you kind of then start to, you have to compromise yourself. You have to betray yourself. And what I mean by that is, you create a false sense of intimacy. You make that person believe that it is more intimate than it is. And this is all so subconscious. But you make that person believe that this is getting more serious, that you are enjoying time with them, which you probably are enjoying the time, but you're not really fully present. You have never really shown them your heart. If you're a pleaser, then you've made sure they're happy and they're comfortable and and they love everything about their time with you. You don't have many needs. You're not needy or clingy. You just want to make sure they're happy because you're terrified they're going to cheat on you. So you don't want to do anything that would make them unhappy with you. See how this is all a reaction from the past? And because you're not able to show up with your needs, you're betraying yourself. You're treating yourself the way others have treated you in the past. So again, initially you're not really doing that because it's just kind of fun and you're getting to know each other and it's flirty and it doesn't have to be so intimate. But if you choose to stay with one person, like let's say there's a good connection, over time, you eventually cross this threshold where you're back in another relationship where there's two people with no intimacy. It may look intimate, there may be elements of it, but there's not really, and then we're disappointed. And um, a lot of times they feel really happy because you've set things up to where they're, they don't, you're not asking anything of them. You don't have any needs. You don't have any wants because you're terrified of having needs and wants because you're terrified they're going to reject you or cheat on you if you express needs and wants. But that's not going to work long term, right? There's no intimacy there. We can't be vulnerable. So this is so incredibly, first of all, understandable why we don't feel safe showing up, but also it happens over and over and over again because we look for, let's say, Uh, my ex didn't like sports. I like sports, but my ex didn't like sports. I'm like, I'm gonna find a man who likes sports. I'm gonna find a man. Like, we look for these surface level things that are different, and we think that's what's going to be the difference in the change. But underneath that, if we're self-protected and not really fully present, then we're going to connect with somebody else who's also self-protected and not fully present. Right? Vibrationally, that's the only way we can match. If we show up embodied and fully aware of who we are and willing to express our needs and our wants to somebody, then the only people we're going to attract are other people on that same vibration. If that's the language you're speaking of, I know myself, I'm confident in myself, I know who I am, and I'm willing to be open and vulnerable to create intimacy with somebody, that's a language. You're going to attract another person that speaks that language. You're not going to attract somebody who speaks the language of, I'm not vulnerable. I'm not interested in really seeing you. I just need you to soothe my anxiety and loneliness and make me feel good about myself. If that's your motivation, then you're going to attract somebody else on that same vibration. Okay. And then phase 3 is long term. We're right back where we started. You're back in a dead end relationship. You're frustrated because another person's turned out disappointed. You still don't know yourself, who you are, what you need, what you want. You're still protected, self-protecting, overworking, overgiving for love. You feel shame and disappointment because the thought of another failed relationship horrifies you, and it would be too humiliating to admit to any family members or friends that another relationship failed, so you just put up with it. Yeah, like I know so many people in this situation who are just like, well, I'm not going to go through another divorce. Like that would be so humiliating. So this is my lot in life, is just to be frustrated, disappointed, and I'll make the most of it. Right. So, I mean, that's anyone's choice. I'm not going to say that's good, bad, right, or wrong, but it makes me sad, incredibly sad. I mean, you've been through enough, right? You've lived a whole life where you're not really vulnerable and seen and wanted and understood, and you deserve that. Um, but I also understand, this is the reality for some people, and I'm never going to tell somebody they can't or shouldn't make that choice. I will help you make the most of the situation. I have a few clients where that's just the choice they've made. Okay, well, let's see how we can make the most of the situation if this is what you're in, but this isn't. But my hope is that I can help as many women as possible not put themselves in this situation in the first place. So here's kind of how it plays out after betrayal. If you don't do any healing work, if you don't do any if you don't really connect to yourself, if you don't feel the feelings of what happened, then this is why and how we cycle through staying stuck. All right, so I'm going to give you can either, if you have any questions or thoughts, as we're going to transition now into how to do the work of not repeating these cycles. But if there's something confusing or if you have a question, why don't you pop it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask it. I'm going to give you opportunity to do that before we move on to the next phase. Hi, Connie, welcome. Glad you're here. Okay. Okay, you good for now? Thank you, Janine. All right, so we'll move on. If you think of a question or something pops up, please feel free to jump in the chat and let me know. All right, so what do we need to do to step out of survival? This is survival mode at its best, right? Like just hanging in there, making it work, making the picture look like it's supposed to look, but feeling absolutely miserable or disconnected or numb, dead, disjointed, frustrated, overall disappointed, right? How do we step out of that survival mode and into really thriving in life? And I want you to know it is absolutely possible, because think about it. There is no one that I can think of who is who's done something really dynamic and amazing and great with their life, who didn't come from a lot of hardship to get there. Everyone who we really look up to and who we see really embodying life and living it and just feeling full of joy and connection, and they're connected to themselves and just getting the most out of life and really leading others and doing the same, had a lot of hardship to overcome in order to get there. So there's something to the dynamic of facing ourselves and facing the hardships, and what the lessons that we learn that we get to keep. So what I always say to my women is, trauma, we develop superpowers to survive trauma. Some of us are hyper attuned to the energy in a room. We can be in the presence of somebody and know immediately if that person is safe or not safe, right? We just know, we just have a sixth sense about us. And this was something we developed in trauma to survive. You get to keep the things that you developed in your trauma to survive. But once you do the healing work, you are an incredibly powerful creator, because you not only are keeping the superpower, but you are healed and can fully embody and express yourself on top of that. I think somebody is unmuted. Yeah, there we go. Okay. You get to fully embody yourself and keep the superpower, that the superpower doesn't go away. So this is sort of a silver lining for those who have experienced trauma, especially a lot of trauma. And part of the work that I do is helping you identify what that superpower is. But the thing is before you do the healing work, you're just employing that superpower all the time. So let's say, yeah, I am really good at understanding the needs of others. And before I did my healing work, I overgave myself to be sure everyone around me was comfortable while completely ignoring all of my own personal needs. In fact, I didn't even ignore my needs. I was fully convinced I didn't have needs. I thought I was one of those people who doesn't have needs, and my purpose in life is to make sure everybody else is happy. I really thought that was like why God put me on this planet. Is and but it was just my brokenness and my lack of sense of self that never was able to develop. So now that I've done the healing work and I'm embodied, I know who I am, I'm able to express my needs, and be happy and just full of who I am. I also still can tell what others need and how to connect with them, and that's part of why the work that I do when I'm working with women is so powerful, because I can so highly attune, so I can employ that superpower when I want to and when I need to and when it's beneficial for me and the person I'm with, but it's not a default that I'm in all the time at the expense of myself. That makes sense. So that's sort of one cool thing that you get to take away once you identify what your superpower is and you do the healing. So what do we do? This is so hard, but the number one thing you can do to recover is acknowledge that you were hurt and be willing to be uncomfortable and sit in the pain. Now, what I don't mean is wallow in self-pity. Self-pity is not sitting in the pain. Self-pity is distracting yourself from the real pain by spiraling into this victim mentality. This is a mind game we play. That's not a feeling, it's a mind thing, right? I mean, just the raw truth. Someone took advantage of me. Someone intentionally tricked me. Someone intentionally lied to me. Just being willing to feel that pain without pushing it away, without minimizing it, and without exaggerating into this big dramatic. Now, the feelings you feel may be big, and somebody looking at you may say that's dramatic. But if you need to cry, or you need to punch a pillow, or you need to yell and scream, because that's where the pain is at, the raw pain, and you're expressing the pain, yes, absolutely. That is feeling the feelings. That is feeling the pain. But if you are trying to manipulate somebody else, like I said, going into your mind with it, with like trying to coerce somebody else into feeling sorry for you, or enjoying the feeling of everyone else seeing you as a victim of what somebody did, that is not feeling the pain. That is avoiding the pain with mind games. Right? And sometimes it's hard to sift out the difference, and I'm happy to help you do that if you're struggling to understand. But I'm talking about staying in your body, the feelings in your body, and not distracting yourself with your mind. So ways that we typically distract ourselves. We have what I call a drug of choice to avoid feelings. It could be food, sex, shopping, gossip, religion, wine, traveling, going out, working, exercising. What's tricky is that all these things can be helpful in you and embodying who you are and helping you like get through the feeling. But we can also use all of these things to distract ourselves from actually feeling feelings by avoiding. So it's really important for you to identify, how do I typically avoid my feelings? When I'm feeling restless, when I'm feeling that uncomfortable feeling, it's so subconscious for many of us. It might be take a minute to identify what your drug of choice is. I have a whole module on this in the membership and in the 90-day transformation journey because it's crucial. It's crucial to you understanding how to stop distracting yourself. When I start to feel uncomfortable, what do? I can tell you for me, I immediately go to sugar. So if I have a day where I'm craving sugar all day, I now know, okay, there's something going on I'm trying to avoid. There's a feeling that I don't want to feel. What is it? I just know that because I know that sugar is a drug of choice for me. Right? So once you identify what it is, whenever you just feel the need to go into that, okay, that's my signal that I'm avoiding something. What am I avoiding? What do I not want to feel? Because we just hate being uncomfortable. We hate feeling the helpless feelings of just, we don't want to feel it. And so we avoid it any way we can. But when we avoid, we're not embodied. We're not connected to our true self. And you've seen what happens. We recreate patterns that keep us stuck and miserable and disappointed. All right, so this is a chart that I use quite often. Again, if you're in phase 1, totally understandable that you can't regulate yet. You just found out your world has just fallen apart. Of course, you're not regulated. Of course, you are like kind of all over the place. Totally normal. We're not going to add pressure and shame and judgment on the fact that you can't handle your emotions fully and appropriately right now. Right? But hopefully, if you're in phase 1 and you're watching this, you can allow yourself to feel the feelings. Maybe you can't feel them all the time. They're too big. Understandable. Maybe you need to go into your head for a while, or you need to escape in some other way. Totally understandable, as long as you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. All right, so here, this chart is about what happens when we don't ever regulate. And what I mean by regulated is our mind and our body is connected, meaning I know what I'm feeling and I feel what I know. I am present with myself and my feelings. I'm not feeling and emoting and my mind is gone, and I'm not overthinking and overanalyzing without feeling anything. Right? I when I'm thinking about something, I'm feeling what I'm thinking. That's a embodied person and a regulated person. And you can feel more than one thing at one time. You can feel anger, and you can feel happy, and you can feel gratitude and resentment. Like you can feel all those things at one time. So somebody who's stuck in their body, who is just acting out and emoting and really kind of in victim mode and just needing everybody to understand that they have feelings, right? They're in a stress response. These people over time, without regulating that, will have digestive problems, immune problems, reproductive, because your frontal lobe, when you're in your stress response, everything shuts down except your basic functioning organs. And if you're turning your stress response on, off, then your body starts to respond to that. Conversely, if you're in your mind all the time, this was me, and numb and not feeling your feelings, I was here for years, decades, and just numb all the time, not feeling enough, you will start to see your body respond with high blood pressure, somatic concerns, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, spastic colon. Like your body's not meant to hold and contain and shut down emotion, and it will over time break down. Right? So if you are experiencing some of these symptoms and you know you have unprocessed trauma, there is a high likelihood that there's some correlation here. And I'm just telling you this as another motivator of like, oh, it is actually a big deal for me to not process my emotions and get present with myself and know how to feel my feelings and regulate my feelings. Because this is the only way to a really embodied life is through. We're not going to avoid in some way. We're just going to walk right through it. Easier said than done, I know. If you've had a lot of trauma, if you've had a lot of childhood trauma, then you're going to need some support. You're going to need to find a good therapist You can join any of my programs or find somebody local who can really support you and help you learn how to feel feelings. Took me a long time to learn how to feel feelings without feeling like I'm going to die or without escape. Like I just didn't know how to feel them. I thought they were going to kill me. All right. So once you start to feel all your feelings and know how to be present with your feelings, then it's time to start being curious about who you really are and what your heart really, ladies, most of us don't know. We are so conditioned to meet other people's needs. We are so conditioned that we are happy if our children are happy, or we are happy if our husbands are happy, or we are happy if we're able to please our boss. Like we are so conditioned to believe that the thing that makes us the happiest is making other people happy. And it is what's the word I'm looking for? Part of the feminine is the ability to do that. So I can't think of the word. It is overusing our natural gifting. It is taking advantage of of course, it brings me incredible joy when I can bring my children joy, when I can meet their needs and I see them relax into the safety of knowing that I'm taking care of something and I've got it. I love that feeling. That is part of who I am, but it is not all of who I am. And in my 30s, and even some of my 40s, I had no idea what truly brings me pleasure, what brings me satisfaction. I had no idea. I had no sense of self sexually, like my own sexual, I had no idea. I thought making my partner happy, my spouse happy, is what made me happy. So if you want to truly recover and truly embody who you are and truly be present within yourself, then you have to know these things. And it just is about getting curious. Curiosity is the antidote to shame. There's so much shame around a woman finding herself. We think that she's selfish. We think that she is ungodly. We think that she is no. If if you're a straight woman wanting a straight man, a strong, solid, embodied masculine man wants a woman who knows herself. He wants a woman who he can love on, protect, take care of, but she is fully embodied in who she is. He doesn't want to have to placate her insecurities, just like we don't want to placate his. Right. And if you don't fully know who you are and you're showing up trying to hide and cover up because you don't know, you're in self-protection, you're playing a role, you're not really being yourself, you're just playing a role. You're going to find somebody else who's also only playing a role, who doesn't know himself. Or if you're needing best friends, your girlfriends, if you want a girlfriend who fully loves herself and knows herself and has fun with you and can encourage you and support you, then you have to be that too. And the only way that you two can be that is it's just knowing who you are. I don't need my friends to tell me that I'm enough. I know that I'm enough. So now my time with my friends is just joy and pleasure and excitement. And if I'm upset and crying, then they can be there for me and connect with me and vice versa. But it's not about, I don't need them to tell me that I'm okay. I don't need a man to tell me that I'm okay and that I'm safe. I don't need friends to tell me that I'm okay and I'm safe. I know that I'm okay and I'm safe within myself. I can be standing in front of the devil himself. I'm good. I have a full agency, a full embodied sense of self. I have my divine guiding light with me. I'm good. So now I can just enjoy those connections and feel enriched by those connections and use their energy when I'm having a bad day and when I'm sad, but not in a way that, please tell me I'm going to be okay. Just please find comfort in that connection. We need each other. Does that make sense? So if this overwhelms you, it makes sense. Like I said, we as women are not taught how to do this. We're not taught how to know who we are. But if you want to stop repeating the patterns of pain and scarcity and lack and frustration and disappointment, this is the only way. So pick one area. If you're not sure where to start, pick one that you're the most curious about and develop that, and use the energy that you build in that to develop something else. So let's say you're like, I'm curious psychologically about how this works. Okay, get in counseling, join my program, do something where you can psychologically stimulate yourself and grow. And as you're psychologically stimulating yourself and embodying yourself and understanding yourself, then that will translate to your emotions, and that will translate to your physical self, and that will translate to knowing who you are vocationally, and improving your finances and you see how like it builds on each other. So just pick the one that you're the most curious about right now, and stay curious in that area. What we tend to do is, I'm not where I should be. This is ridiculous. I don't want to do, like, we go into shame. So when you catch yourself going into shame, redirect yourself with curiosity. Curiosity will always pull us out of shame. Just getting curious. Why am I doing that? Wow, why are those thoughts coming around? What's going on with that? I wonder when that started. Just like curious. Just get curious. Okay. So I have a whole unit in my transformation journey and in my membership that's dedicated only to making space, allowing space for new things. This is critical. So let's say you're doing some of the healing work and you're wanting to look at things differently. There is a period of time, and for some it's a long period of time, and for some it's shorter, but there is this period of time where there's nothing, because you don't yet have the new thing. You don't yet really know you know what disappointment is, but you don't know what not disappointment is. What does that feel like? What does that look like? How is that? And so you have to be able to hold this space without getting tripped up and like getting anxious and afraid, and then just going back to what you know. Right? So think about it like, I'm sure everyone can relate to this. Like, you're trying to lose weight. So for the first month, you're like on it and you're logging your meals and you're doing your thing. You don't really feel anything yet, but you're like, it's only been a month, but like, you're really motivated. You really want to do it. Then month 2 or month 3 comes, and like maybe you've lost 2 pounds or something. You're like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't keep, it's harder to hold on to that vision. You're feeling kind of, it just sucks. Like, you want to go back to what you had. Like, you're not really seeing the results. You can't hold the space to allow the new self to emerge, where you start feeling good and people start noticing. And like so many people can't, and that's just one. Translate that to pretty much any other area. Like, we want to change. It's not that we're not motivated. We are motivated, but most of us don't know how to navigate the empty space between what was and what is. Most of us self-sabotage in that space. Most of us revert back to what we know. The anxiety of that time, where we don't really know that we can trust ourselves. We don't know that we can trust where we're going. We've heard people say it's worth it, but we're not sure. We've never experienced it before. But I know what disappointment feels like. There's this thing going around on Instagram right now. Let's see if I can quote it or get close to it. It says something like, my nervous system will always choose the misery it knows over the joy it doesn't know. My nervous system will always choose the misery it knows over the joy it doesn't know. Right? So this is where we have to really do the intentional, we have the tools in place to be able to process through those feelings, to allow the ambiguity of what's coming so that the joy can fill that space, so that the life can fill that space, so that we can get to know, we can allow our nervous system and our brains to get to know a joy that it doesn't know right now. It just doesn't know. So hopefully, what I have in my course, the digital platform, is a whole section on emotional regulation and what to do. So like if you're feeling really anxious, I have tools that tell you what to do with that anxiety. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling angry, because we don't really know how to feel our feelings and process them. And if you don't stay intentional with it, then you're going to go back to what you know, and you're not going to know how to make the space for what's new and what's to come. And then practice celebrating yourself, practice focusing on having fun, invite your family and friends in to help you create. This was so hard for me at first, was creating new memories, intentionally creating new memories that brought me a lot of joy that didn't have anything to do with my ex. That was really hard. That was a grief that I had to walk through, because it was kind of the ultimate letting go of the dream of what was and building something new that's just for me, which meant I had to love myself enough to do that. I had to find value in myself enough to do that. I had to want myself enough to do that. It took me a moment to be able to do it. But knowing that this is how we build a future that's exciting and fun and not disappointing, full of everything that's the opposite of disappointing, is we have to choose it. And in order to choose it, thankfully, I had a group of people around me who really rallied with me and celebrated with me and wanted this for me. And so enjoyed watching me come alive and stumble around with it a little bit. And it was messy, right? Because life is messy and we're messy and we're not linear in our healing. It's all cyclical. Okay, so hopefully this gives you my goal with this masterclass is to give you some clarity on how you've navigated yourself post betrayal. Again, I'm not interested in any judgment or shame about what you like. It is normal. I taught it this way because this is the normal response that people have after they've been betrayed. Like the human conditioning, that is either the phase 1, 2, and 3. That is how humans respond to betrayal. And then understanding how to interrupt our normal human response with healing, with life, with love, with choosing yourself, with choosing a future, choosing to believe that there's a future that can open up for you that's better than you could have ever imagined. And the pain that you've been through is what makes, I can tell you, on my really good days, on my really joyful days, on my days where I'm like, I cannot believe this is my life, I love everything about that day because I understand the pain of the opposite. I understand what it took for me to get there. I understand how hard it was for me to make the choice, and I'm so proud of myself for choosing it. And this is where I'm at with the women that I serve, is I want you to feel that feeling. I want to provide all the resources you need in order for you to feel alive, because you deserve to feel alive, because God, the universe, like created you to be fully alive. You were not created to feel disappointed and let down and numb and some shell of a version of who you really are. You were created to be fully alive, not just for you, but for the collective. We need you. We need your gifts. We need your joy. We need your spirit. We need your life, right? It's not just about you, it's about everyone. I mean, for me, like, what if I had chosen to stay dead inside and to not heal and not grow? I wouldn't be able to serve anyone. I wouldn't be able to help women see freedom in life, right? So whatever your version of that is, we need what you have to offer for you to come alive and be fully embodied. Okay, so resources for you. Again, I have my membership, which is basically access to my entire digital platform, which has the all 6 phases. I have identified sort of 6 phases of healing, undoing our patterns, making that space, learning how to live in joy and freedom without feeling guilty and shame. More details about when we show up self-protected, what that looks and feels like for ourselves and others. We go through all of that. There's all the self-regulation tools that you need, guided meditations, journal prompts, it's all there. And then we do one monthly call, sort of like this, but it's a little more interactive. That's once a month. So there's that. If the membership is for somebody who's done some healing work for themselves, they kind of understand where they're at, but they need some support, they need some guidance, they really want to fully come alive. They're not sure how, but they've done a lot of the heavy lifting of dealing with their pain and their trauma. The membership is a great option. If you're more in the beginning of your journey, you haven't done much work, and you need some consistent support, then the 90-day transformation is for you. So then that's the membership content plus 12 weeks of weekly meetings with me, with the group. And then you also get 2 one-on-one sessions where we really dive deep. So by the end of the 90 days, you're well on your way to understanding yourself and feeling strong and knowing what you need to do. And you have lifetime access then to the membership. So you can continue to dig through those master classes and have the digital resources there to continue your journey once you've done the intensive for the 90 days. And then I also have Slack chat. So in Slack, you and I connect. We can do it just a week. So if there's something specific that you're dealing with and you're going through and you just need some support, then we will do voice text back and forth, or just texting back and forth for 5 days, as much as you need for 5 days in a row. You and I are just chatting. I'm helping you get through what you are working through for that moment. There's also a 1-month option for that. So if you're maybe it's a little more intense, you need more than a week. So you don't feel like you need the 90-day journey, but some women who are in the 90-day journey purchase a week or a month of Slack chats just to help them. If they're really in the middle of processing something and needing some support, then they'll purchase a Slack chat just to get a little more access to me and help get over the hump. I'm happy to do that. And then if you're in the membership and you're like, the same would apply. You are feeling a little overwhelmed, frustrated, you need some, you're like close to getting it, you're close to this next level of transformation and you need a little support to do that. Slack chats are perfect for that. And then all my free resources are on Instagram at The Trauma Teacher. I have some downloads there, and then I'm posting stuff 2 or 3 times a week that helps you just stay in the mindset of growth, stay in the mindset of moving forward and getting out of feeling stuck and disappointed. All right. So I will stay on here. If any of you have any thoughts, questions, feel free to unmute or pop it in the chat. Thank you for jumping in, for joining me. Those of you who are members, the replay will be in the membership portal so that you can, and I'll put the slides in there as well. If you want to go back and re-listen, you're welcome to. Otherwise, hopefully I will check in with you. If any of the resources interested you, then send me a DM on either Facebook or Instagram, or you can email me, janice@janiceholland.com. and I will get you connected with the resource that feels the most interesting, or I can talk with you, about your specific situation and let you know which one I think would be the best for you, or anything like that. So we can chat through that. Okay. Okay. Thank you for jumping in. Don't let your battery die before you get home. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions, concerns? All right, ladies, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.